Today, what we're going to be doing is changing out a top end on this 2016 KTM 50 SX. So my name is Stan, and I'm going to be going ahead and changing out the top end on my son's dirt bike. It's been a while where he's probably had that done, but I know that at a certain point in time, about let's just call it 20 to about 30 hours, you should be changing out the top end on those pistons. So that's what I'm going to be doing today on my son's bike. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video. If you do think it's going to be helpful to you, please like, please subscribe. It's only going to help my channel, of course, grow, and of course make sure that I can do better and cooler things around these dirt bikes and car videos. So thanks again and enjoy the video. If you have any questions or something like that, again, just please ask in the comments. I regularly check that up and I do follow up with it. Thanks. So first things first, what we're going to do is take out this bolt right here that holds the exhaust, and then we're going to move to the springs. As soon as I get that loose, unwind it. Next, I'm going to take off these springs right here. Just going to use a zip tie to help me pull these off. Just like that. Next one. There we go. Should be able to wiggle it off now. There we go. Next, what we want to do is actually start working on the radiators. So I'm going to unscrew this cap right here because we have to drain out the fluid in just a minute here. Let's go ahead and pull it off like that. And we're going to take our 8mm socket, pull out this drain bolt right here, so that way all the fluid comes out. Okay, it's already loose. As you can see, that is some dirty fluid. Alright, that should have it all out right there. Just going to lean the bike over a little bit just to make sure there's nothing left. Should be roughly about 500 milliliters. Alright, next we're going to do is remove this hose clamp, and this hose clamp, so that we can start taking off the radiators themselves. Pretty loose. So pretty loose. That one's pretty loose too. So I'm just going to pull down a little bit. Should be fairly easy at this point. Now what we want to do is remove this shroud so that we can get to these bolts so we can remove the actual radiator off of the frame. Just take a flathead screwdriver, push it in, and it pops out like that. Go to the other side, do the same thing. Again, just taking out the shrouds. Okay. Now we're probably going to move to the seat right away just to make sure I can disconnect the fuel line and whatnot so we can get this whole piece off. In order to take off this entire piece, we have to first disconnect the fuel line back here. So it's already closed the fuel line, you don't have to worry about that. This just got to wiggle off. Don't worry about the fuel that comes out because it probably will. There we go, slightly. As soon as I got the seat off, I just took off the spark plug, pop that off, and unscrewed it right out of its bolt just to make it a little easier. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the rest of these radiators. Again, 8mm bolts. That should pop off. And we got one right there, so there we go. Just pull this through. Head on over to the other side and repeat the same process. Pretty simple. Alright, so now's the fun stuff. I'm going to take off this head right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts, 10mm. Now that I got them loose, I'm just going to finger and tighten them. If I pull out the bolts, there's little copper washers underneath, which obviously help when you squeeze it down and torque it down. But just make sure when you pull out the screws, the bolts, should I say, you keep the washer on it. You don't want to lose those. Some will come off, some won't obviously, so just pay attention to it. Last thing you want to do is lose one of them. Looks like all of them came off except for one, so I'll just remember that one. Oh, there it goes. So one of the gasket seals came off right away from this chamber part. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take this one off too, because they gave us a new one in the kit, which I'll show you here shortly. I don't know if you guys can notice this, but the cylinder head is extremely burnt out, so it was definitely time for a new one. All right, next up you're going to have the cylinder chamber here. 1, 2, 3 in the back there, 4 screws. We're going to be going ahead and taking off now. Just lightly loosening it up first. Now that I got the bolts loosened, I'm going to just slowly finger them off again. This is most likely going to be kind of solid placed. Never want to put anything underneath here that would damage it, because that's where your main gasket goes. So I'm just going to use a rubber mallet, tap it a few times on each side, see if I can loosen it up a little bit. Again, just pull it off slowly, like that. Now what you want to do is put a rag in there of some sort, just to make sure, again, no other additional debris falls in there or whatnot, so bear with me. Now I got my rag in place. I gotta pull out these little rings that are holding on the wrist pin. It is a little tricky, so just take your time with it, but you force in this little groove. So just be careful with these little rings, because obviously I used a sharp object to get in there to pull it out, and I did poke myself. Small little blood thing, human error. What I'm going to do is just take a smaller size socket, whatever one works best, just to fit it right in here. See if I can push through that pin. So now I'm just going to continue pulling it out. There we go, until it fully comes out. Again, I didn't bother with the back one because don't need it. Now lastly, we're just going to remove this wrist pin bearing. As you can see, it's very loose to push out your finger. I ended up finding Vertex piston kit for this bike. As you can see on here, it's KTM 50 SX 2009 to 2021. Direct replacement, standard bore. Comes with a couple head gaskets, wrist pin clips, piston ring, and a couple gaskets up there that, again, we're going to be replacing that for. Brand new wrist pin bearing, wrist pin. Again, complete kit for a top end rebuild. First step we're going to do is take that brand new wrist pin bearing. I'm going to just get some standard two cycle oil, lubricate it a little bit, again just to make sure it's nice and smooth, and that it goes in there nice and easily. Perfect fit. I'm going to go ahead and put one side piston ring in. Okay, what I'm going to do is put it on this side, just because it's a little easier to push on this side. It's a little more open. So I wasn't able to get it on camera for you, but I did get the wrist pin clip in there. Again, you want this side, the one with the arrow, going toward the exhaust. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and put this over this, and then eventually slide the wrist pin through there. Once I do that, I'll put in the other clip to hold it all in place. You'll see on the piston itself, there's a little clip right there. That's for the spacing of this, so that we can't go back and forth. So what I'm going to do is just get it right close to it and slide the clip the rest of the way around it. Just like that. Now what I'm going to do is actually take the wrist pin itself, lubricate it, same thing with some 2-stroke oil, to make sure that once it fits back in here, everything is just jiving the right way. Take the piston, again, arrow side to the exhaust port. I'm going to slide the pin right through. Just going to push it through right here with my socket that I used previously. to make sure I know it's all the way in. Now that I got the clip in slightly, just want to make sure it's in there tightly. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this little piece like I used last time and make sure it clips right in. And there we go. It sure did. Now that I got the gasket pretty much cleaned up all off the sides, I'm just going to take some more two-stroke oil, lubricate the cylinder a little bit more, just so that when I put on the actual cylinder block, it's going to go on smoother. So just dabbing some two-stroke oil all over it. Again, just going to get nice lubed up. Going to take the gasket that came new. That. You're gonna have to wiggle it on there pretty good, but rest assured, you'll pretty much get it. Slowly. Pretty much like that. Now we're going to go ahead and put the bolts on. First, just finger tighten them. Now what it calls for is 20 Newton meters. So that converts basically over to about 15 pound-feet of torque. I'm just going to go ahead and do a crisscross pattern. First, just tightening slowly, just to get a little feel for it. Now I'm going to go ahead and torque it to spec. Again, 15 pound-feet of torque. All right, now we're going to put in the new gasket seals up here. Put that in the slot where it belongs. I just put some, again, two-stroke oil on there. Go. Now I'll take the top part of the head, insert it here. There's a little groove right here and a small groove right here, so this groove is going to go in this little slot, and then that hole is going to go in there. So that should just fit nicely. Yeah, just like that. And then we'll put the bolts in right now. Now, same thing as we did earlier, 20 Newton meters. So you hear the click. Now that we have that all torqued down, I'm going to put in a new spark plug. I'm using a 5/8 wrench. Alright, next thing we're going to do is put that on the radiators. Just try to put them on the way you had them before. Now we can start connecting the hoses. I'm going to go ahead and start with that very top one. The bottom one here. I'm just going to fit this one on right away. This back on, just like that. Go to the other side. Just like that. Want to make sure we put on the drain bolt. I got just tight. Lastly, I'm going to fill up the radiator back up with some new radiator fluid. The other one was kind of dark red color, used up. So I'm going to go ahead and change out some new one. And it's roughly 500 milliliters, so set roughly like that. Now we want to put the whole gas tank back on. These two lips right here hold the inside of this gas tank right there. Just like that. Take the last bolt, put it in the hole where it belongs, screw this down. There we go. Seat back on. Just twist it down like that. Back to fuel line, which is back there. Again, just get your hose on as far as it goes. Good. All right, last part we have here now is just to put on the actual exhaust pipe. So just get it somewhat close to where it's supposed to go. Like that. And then you just go ahead and push it in like this. And it fits in snug. You put in the screw to put in there. And last but not least, we just gotta hang on these springs so it stays in put. So what I'm gonna do is pull this down here. We'll get the second one on right now, right on the bottom here. There we go. I'll just cut those off. Now we'll give it a start to see if it works. Choke on.